Hi everybody, my name is Abraham and I'm your big brother in recovery, welcoming you back to another educational program at Sobriety Society International. And for all of you who have been with us throughout the beginning, thank you so much. And for anybody new that's coming to the channel, boy, we sure hope we got something of value to add to you in your pursuit of sustainable sobriety. I hope you enjoyed our last video. It was entitled, Your Perception is the Cause of Your Deception, or is it? And we found that on page 30 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we saw last week two words, the first paragraph and the second paragraph in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. We saw a word illusion and we saw a word delusion. And we said last week, if you go back, you'll find out, I'm just recapping, that illusion is pretty much game that other people run on you. But if we look at the second paragraph, we see the word delusion. And I want to add one more thing to it because I want to get right into what we're going to do today. But I want to draw your attention to something I need to put a cherry on top of the cake from last week. And it's found on page 33 of your big book. As a matter of fact, the first paragraph and the last sentence. We remember on page 30, those were the directions to take in step one. And it talked about the delusion that we are like other people or presently may be, has to be smashed. And we understand why it has to be smashed, because whatever you plant into your mind, it grows. In other words, what you think about, you bring about. Because, on one hand, the reason why the literature says we recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body is simply because you may not want to use, but you can't stop thinking about it. So these are some further instructions based on last week, and then I'll get right off into where I need to go. As a matter of fact, this is a great jump off point. First paragraph. Let's read the last sentence in that paragraph. If we are planning to stop drinking, there must be no reservation of any kind, nor any lurking notion that someday we will be immune to alcohol. I often say, and the literature says it too, that we're not cured, and I've never confessed that I was, but I have stated that I've recovered, which I have. I've never gotten cured of alcoholism, but I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. In other words, the main problem was located in my mind, but we don't want to eliminate the body as well. However, I no longer think about using, so therefore I no longer have to live as an active user. So go back and look at some of our previous videos and you'll understand what I'm saying, but we do recover. So that sets the tone for me to talk about what I want to talk about today. And if you haven't gotten these already, my new book about opioids has just come out. You can go to my website, SobrietySocietyINTL.com. Everything you need to know about opioids. You can see it's not a thin book. It's pretty in-depth. And you can also get our other one, Everything You Need to Know About Drugs, Addiction, and Recovery. They're highly sought after, and a lot of people have gotten a tremendous value. Now that I've plugged that, why don't you pull your big book out? We're going to be using two books today. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, as we always do, simply because we stated last week that the fellowship has grown to a point to where, as though most of the fellowship doesn't read the book, but the book hasn't changed. The problem is some of the people in the fellowship stopped reading the book. And I'm not here to cast negative stuff on the fellowship, because the fellowship is very, very important. A lot of good people in the fellowship. I have a ton of friends in the fellowship. But let's be honest, most people aren't reading the book. We're going to also use a companion tool to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, 12 and 12. And as I often say, don't believe nothing I say, but let's find out what the book says. Now, I want to draw your attention to something because I often say we do recover. And someone asked me a question this week which provoked this video. And the question was based upon, why do you always read the big book? Well, I read them all because guess what? If everything in your tool belt is a hammer, you'll treat everything like a nail. I have to read them all because I understand neither Alcoholics Anonymous nor Narcotics Anonymous is the only way to recover. But what I like, there are over 80 ways that I know of that a person can recover, and I cover them in my the books that I wrote. But I want to draw your attention because I asked a member of another fellowship. Matter of fact, we're going to use the NA book as well to show you that I do read them all. I asked him a question because he's very well known, and I'm not throwing nobody under the bus, but he was giving out some real negative information to the newcomers and to some of the people that had been around for a while. And what he was saying is that he's a real dope fiend and he doesn't care who knows about it as long as he never forgets it. And I pulled him to the side afterwards because we have a rapport, and it's a very good rapport. And I showed him in the book where they talk about that as being a morbid reflection. Who wants to be reminded of their past? In other words, we can't recover until we remove or repair the wreckage of our past. So I proceeded to show him something, and I'm going to the Narcotics Anonymous book. And page 68. The bottom of page 68, it asks a serious question, which I don't hear a lot of people in either fellowship talking about. That's why I'm doing this video. What is our message? The message is that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Our message is hope and the promise of freedom. When all is said and done, our primary purpose can only be to carry the message to the addict who still suffers, because that is all we have to give. So that one paragraph tells me that our whole recovery movement, both fellowships, have one word that we're promoting to those in and out of the rooms, that there is hope. Why is there hope? Because we do recover. What do we recover from? A seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. How do we do it? Simple. We take steps and we take principles, and that's why I'm doing this video right now. I want to draw your attention, and I'll tell you what the title of this video is. The title of this video is Principles Before Personalities. Principles before personalities. I am well aware that in the 12 and 12, the word principles before personalities come from the 12th tradition. And there is a both long version as well as a short version to that particular tradition. And I like to read it to you, and it's found on page 184, our 12th tradition found in the 12 and 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. And if you go to page 192, that's the short version, page 192 of our 12 and 12, same book, we'll see the long version or the long form of the 12th tradition. And finally, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the principle of anonymity has an immense spiritual significance. Another word for significance is purpose. It reminds us that we are to place principles before personalities, the title of our video. That we are actually to practice a genuine humility. This to the end that our great blessings may never spoil us, that we shall forever live in thankful contemplation of Him who presides over us all. I'd like to also read you something else in your 12 and 12, and it's at the forward. The second paragraph. AA's third paragraph. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which if practiced as a way of life can expel the obsession, the mental obsession, to drink and enable the sufferer, that's the person with the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, to become happy and usefully whole, as opposed to being restless, irritable, and discontent. Now I want to draw your attention to something much more deeper. On page 60 of your big book, I want to take a closer look at step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Notice there are three parts to this. First, the average person hasn't ever considered what the message is. We know the message is hope, but notice the first part of step 12. Having had, past tense, a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So that tells me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the spiritual awakening is the result of taking the 12 steps, simply because there's no chemical solution or physical or natural solution for our spiritual problem. There's a spiritual answer, and the only way to do that is to work those steps, because behind those steps there are principles. Notice what it says next. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics. Notice it didn't say the, but this. What is this message? Because there are many messages we can carry. But the message we need to carry is you suffer from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And the solution to that problem is a spiritual awakening. But the way in which you get that spiritual awakening, because no human power can relieve you of your addiction, is simply work the steps, because every step has a principle. Now notice what it says next. And to practice these principles in all our affairs. It never said to practice these steps. Why? Because I've already taken the steps. But it's the principles I need to incorporate, merely because the principles are the only thing that are going to change my personality. Merely because my personality is a learned behavior. And prior to me getting to step 12, I don't get sober. In other words, I don't get sane, merely because my personality up until this point, I think, is me. But after I recover, I discover that my mind is not myself, but my spirit is. In other words, prior to getting to step 12, a person's mind controls them. But when they recover, their spirit controls their mind. Does that make sense? Let's continue to read. Many of us, including myself, exclaim, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. Notice it didn't say steps. It's constantly saying principles. We're not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. Here it goes again. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, because nobody can work these principles perfectly in their lives. So I guess the question is, what are these principles? Because as we forestated, every step has a principle behind it. And I need people, and I need to reiterate, we do recover. What do we recover from? A seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Where is it located? Page 23 says the main problem centers in the mind rather than in the body. But Dr. Silkworth tells us that we should not, in other words, on Roman numeral page XXVI, first paragraph, the middle of the page, well, the first paragraph, He says, the physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life. Get your big book dictionary and look it up, maladjusted. That we were in full flight from reality, that sounds insane, or were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent. In fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. Notice what he's going to say next. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. Oh, he just didn't talk about you had a thinking problem. He said your body was sickened as well. And notice what he's going to strongly emphasize. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. In other words, we have a mental obsession. Once you obsess enough, what you think about, you bring about. You go and you actually consume. And once you consume, you cause the phenomenon of craving. You can't crave until you've consumed. But when you've consumed, you trigger the allergic reaction or the phenomenon of craving. One is too many and 1,000 isn't enough. Stop saying that foolishness, one is too many and one is too many. It simply is one is too many and 1,000 isn't enough. So with that being said, I want us to get pretty much in depth on what are the principles that they keep reiterating that we must apply into our lives, because prior to me coming into recovery, I applied principles in my life, but they didn't give me the result that I was looking for, because you remember, thinking, action, result. If you don't like the result, change the thinking, because the action is neutral. So I needed to learn and incorporate and continue to practice these principles in all of my affairs. Here they are. The first principle behind step 1 is honesty. And I'll read you a short definition. Fairness and straightforwardness of conduct, adherence to the facts. The second principle behind the second step is hope. You remember we read in the NA book and in the AA book, we recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, hopeless and helpless. Why? Now there is hope and there is help. And I'm going to give you something at the end of this video to give you a definition of what a recovered person looks like, something you can look forward to, or something you should experience after you have a spiritual awakening. I can only transmit what I've experienced. I have recovered and I've been empowered to help others. That's why I'm telling you this. It's an equal opportunity. Hope, to expect with desire, something on which hopes are centered. And what are our hopes centered on? Our third tradition. The honest desire for membership is an honest desire to stop using. The third principle, faith. As I say third principle, you think and look at third step. Fourth principle, you look at fourth step. Third principle, faith. Simply complete confidence, belief, and trust. Fourth principle, courage. Our big book says all great men of faith have courage. Firmness of mind and will in the face of extreme difficulty. Mental or moral strength to withstand fear. If you notice, step 4 says made a searching and fearless. Why? Absence of fear. Why? Because I got faith in step 3. Where there's faith, there's no need to fear. Step number 5, integrity, to be integrated. The quality or state of being complete or undivided soundness. The 6th principle, willingness, prompt to act or respond, accepted and done of choice or without reluctance. Seventh principle, humility. I often say if you don't humble yourself, you will be humiliated. Not proud or haughty, not arrogant or assertive. A clear and concise understanding of what we are, followed by a sincere desire to become what we can be. I can't get to potential until I discover purpose, because purpose is who I am, but potential is what I can do. The eighth principle, love. Unselfish concern that freely accepts another in loyalty and seeks his good to hold dear. Number 9, discipline. Training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character, to bring under control, to train or develop by instructions. Number 10, patience or perseverance. You know, I made a statement the other day, impatience is a sign of immaturity. That's why they talk about instant gratification, and they associate that with king baby. I want what I want when I want it. I've learned that if I'm patient, I can get anything that I want. But let's talk about the definition of the 10th principle, perseverance or patience. Steadfast despite opposition or adversity. In other words, I'm going to stick to it till I get where I'm going. I'm like a postage stamp. Able or willing to bear, to persist in an understanding in spite of counter influences. You know, you can tell a lot about a man or a woman when they're going through and things aren't going at the way that they anticipate them to go. They often say that you will find out if it doesn't come out in the wash, it'll come out in the rinse. That strengthens your character. The 11th principle, awareness. Alive and alert, vigilant and observing. And the last principle, service. A helpful act, contribution to the welfare of others, useful labor that does not produce a tangible commodity. You know, I'm reminded of something in the big book on page 77. You know, we read it all the time in our preamble, and it talks about our primary purpose is to stay sober and help others to achieve sobriety. But I'm going to show you something that most people may not have ever seen, what our real purpose is. That's our primary. I went to primary school, but I also went to other higher learning. Go to page 77 and look at the first paragraph, but the beginning of the 4th sentence. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. That's what I think about when I think about service. You know, it often reminds me that when I help others, I help myself. That's the purpose why I'm doing this channel. So, in conclusion, I just wanted to let you know, when you look at step 12, know that you and I do recover, and I promised you that I would show you the definition of what a recovered person is. If you want to know about recovered versus recovering, go back a few videos, look at my video on that topic, and also take a peek at how did Bill W. recover, right? Because page 17 of our book tells us that we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. So if he was once hopeless, he must have gotten hope, step 12, right? Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. So the question is, if they solved the problem, why do you still have it? So now, I want to unveil something to you, and I want you to look at it through the lens that I'm going to look at it through, because I'm certainly living this. You know, these are, like they said, a spiritual life is not a theory, it's a way of life. The best illustration I've seen for the way step 12 so boldly illustrates what we can have is page 84. And let's start at the bottom of the page. Last paragraph. Even though it goes right before step 11. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. You can replace that and put your drug of choice there. We're not fighting ourselves. We're not fighting others. We're not fighting God, the system, nor our primary drug of choice. As a matter of fact, drugs never was our problem. It was a symptom of the problem. We had a spiritual disease. Page 64, you'll find that out. For by this time, sanity will have returned. Well, sanity came back in step 2. We will seldomly be interested in liquor or your primary drug of choice. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. I don't want to touch it. When I used to gravitate towards it, now I'm backing away from it. If tempted. We react sanely and normally. Why? Because we used to react insanely and abnormally. That's why the literature says think before you act or react. So a lot of people prior to working the steps are either actors or reactors. You know, they're not thinking. And we will find that this has happened automatically. I mean, you don't need an interpreter for that. It just happens. I don't know when I got addicted, but I do know when I recovered, when I got to step 12. We will see that our new attitude or new way of thinking towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. Why? Because God is doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. It just comes. This is the miracle of it. What is a miracle? It's something you can't explain with natural words. We're not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. I can go anywhere in the world I want to go. Why? Because I have the power now. Prior to, I had no power. I was powerless and unmanageable. You remember? Now that I have found the power, page 45, lack of power, that was our problem, I can live versus how I used to survive. We feel as though we have been placed in a position of neutrality. I often make a joke, but it's a truth. In my drug dealing career, even though I had a lucrative drug career, and I'm not bragging about that because one fellowship says we don't care about your playground, playmate, or playthings. All we're interested in is do you want to stop using? I would often tell them I wasn't even in the mob. I was a neutron. So now you see what this also says, neutrality, safe and protected. You know, that's all I ever wanted, and I think that's all you ever wanted in your life is to feel safe and protected. Notice this how this recovered thing looks when you get it. We have not even sworn off. Instead, watch this, the problem has been removed. Oh man, you better not say that. It does not exist for us. What? It's not in remission? We're not still recovering? No, if you got to 12, you recovered. We're not cocky, nor are we afraid, because fear will only keep you clean for so long, but you can get clean and never get sober, but you can never get sober without first being clean, because clean simply means abstinence. And our book says this is a program of entire abstinence. That is our experience, meaning those more than 100 men and women who have recovered. This is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. Well, that's simple. Fit spiritual condition. Notice it didn't say fit physical condition or fit mental condition. It said fit spiritual. In other words, I have trust God, I've clean house, and I'm continuing to help others. That's Dr. Bob's rendition of keeping it simple. But if you want a much more elaborate one from Abraham, how about this? The first 3 steps is to simply trust God. 4, 5, and 6, clean house. 7, 8, 9, help others. 10, 11, and 12, continue to maintain what you just obtained. Notice this next paragraph. This is powerful. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe, cunning, baffling, and powerful. We are not cured, I told you, of alcoholism. After 38 years, if I pick up a miniature, it's over, I've triggered it. But guess what? I don't think about picking up a miniature. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Notice, John Maxwell says your future success is predicated on your daily routine. And I have a routine now based on the big book. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. You know, it used to irritate me when I used to hear people say, you got a thinking problem. Notice the book says seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Don't leave the physical out. But the book just verified it. I don't have a thinking problem. I just didn't know how to use my will properly. I used it improperly. I used it to fulfill self-will. But when I recovered and I discovered these principles that make me think about God's will now. And God's will, as we read on page 77, is simply to help others. You know, I hope this video has been inspiring to you. And again, I need your help in helping me get the message out about this channel. And I thank you for all of you who have subscribed and leaving comments, and continue to press the like button and leave comments at the bottom. I hope to continue, and I will continue to bring you more educational videos because, as I said, you know, we're in this together. And if anything, I want you to know today that we do recover. And you know what? I believe it will happen for you. This is your big brother in recovery, Abraham, saying, keep coming back. It works if and when you work it.